What if the person you thought you knew for 15 years turned out to be someone you never knew at all? That photo on my husband's phone was just the beginning. The real truth? When I discovered it, nothing was ever the same again. Don't miss the shocking ending of this story. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now. Because the biggest shock of my life was about to unfold. I was coming home from work when I noticed Michael's phone left on the kitchen counter. In our 15-year marriage, I had never touched his phone, never felt the need to. That's what trust was about. But that night, it kept ringing non-stop, at least 10 times in an hour. I got worried. Maybe someone in his family was sick. Maybe it was an emergency. When I opened the phone, the gallery was open. And there, right in the center of the screen, was a photograph. A photo of a woman. But this wasn't just any ordinary photo. This woman looked familiar, very familiar. I stood there frozen, holding the phone, because that woman had died 8 years ago. 8 years ago, I went to her funeral, cried with my mother-in-law, mourned for Michael's first wife, whom he had been grieving for years. Sarah, but the timestamp on the photo showed last week. A photo taken last week of a dead woman. How was this possible? I examined the photo more closely. Sarah was smiling. She was standing in a kitchen. Behind her were kitchen cabinets I didn't recognize. And on her left hand was a wedding ring, a shiny, new-looking wedding ring. Until that moment, I had never doubted anything about our marriage. Michael was the perfect husband, an amazing father to our children. Every morning he would make my coffee. In the evenings he would read bedtime stories to the kids. I had seen his eyes well up when he talked about his first wife, thought he had been carrying the pain of losing her on his shoulders for 15 years. Even when he proposed, he had said, "You can't replace Sarah, but there's room in my heart for you too." At the time, I found these words very romantic. Now they had a completely different meaning. I put the phone down and tried to breathe. 100 different explanations came to mind. Maybe it was an old photo with the wrong date. Maybe it was an app glitch. Maybe it was another woman who looked a lot like Sarah. Maybe. But something inside me was starting to crumble. That fragile, thin feeling. The moment you sense the truth approaching. As if the ground I had been standing on for 15 years was beginning to crack. When Michael came home, I said nothing. "Your phone was left in the kitchen," I said simply. "Thanks, honey," he said and took his phone. Normal as always. At dinner, he joked with the kids, asked me about my day. We watched the news on TV, but I was no longer normal. I was studying his every move, how he acted when his phone rang, how his facial expression changed when he got a message. Small details I hadn't noticed in 15 years. After that night, I started observing. Patterns I hadn't noticed in 15 years. Michael's Tuesday night hangouts with friends. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m. A routine he never broke. Saturday mornings when he left early for the gym. He would leave the house at 6 a.m. and not return until noon. Business trips he took twice a month on weekends. How was I so blind? There were so many signs. And most importantly, Sarah's death story. He said it was a car accident in 2016 on a rainy evening, a sudden loss. But I had never asked for details. Which hospital, which cemetery, what was the funeral like? Because I respected his grief. When you marry a widower, you don't pry into his past. I was so naive. Now it was time to pry. On Tuesday, when Michael said, "I'm going out with friends," I said, "Have fun, honey." I had to act normal. But an hour after he left, so did I. I followed him in my car. My heart was beating so fast I could barely breathe. The place he went to was a small town 30 miles from downtown, 47 Riverside Drive. The house he parked at was modern, clean with a beautiful garden, full of flowers, well maintained, and the woman who greeted him at the door was the woman from the photo on his phone, Sarah. He hugged her, kissed her on the lips. They entered the house together, just like a normal married couple. At that moment, my entire world shook. Michael wasn't a man who had been mourning for 15 years. He was a man who had been living a double life for 15 years, and Sarah had never died at all. I sat in the car crying. But this wasn't just the tears of betrayal. These were tears of shock, because questions started exploding in my mind. Why such a lie? Why had he proposed to me? What was I? A backup plan? A second wife? What did our children mean to him? Did they know Sarah's children too? I sat there for hours. At 11 p.m., Michael came out of the house, got in his car, and headed home. I got home before him. I lay in bed pretending to read a book. "How was your evening?" I asked. "Good, normal," he said. "We talked about Tom's new job." Lie. Everything was a lie. The next day, after dropping the kids at school, I started researching. Sarah Jenkins, 42 years old. I searched on Google, found her social media accounts. She had a Facebook page, and there were photos of her with Michael from 2019, 2020, 2021. One of them even said, "Happy 15th wedding anniversary." 15th wedding anniversary. But I had been married to Michael for 15 years. How could this be possible? And worse yet, Sarah also had children with Michael, 2 daughters, Emma and Sophie, the same age as my children, so he had children with both families at the same time. At that moment, I understood the truth. Michael wasn't just lying. He was living a double life, literally, and I had no idea. I researched deeper, marriage records, divorce papers, and what I found destroyed me. Sarah was Michael's real wife, that was true, but they had never divorced. The divorce papers were fake. When Michael proposed to me, he was already a married man. He had been committing bigamy for 15 years. This wasn't just cheating. This was a crime, a federal crime. That evening when Michael came home, I acted as usual. I cooked dinner, he played with the kids, we watched TV. A normal evening. But storms were raging inside me. The next morning, after dropping the kids at school, I went to a lawyer. "Bigamy," the lawyer said with a serious expression. 15 years of bigamy. This is a very serious crime. It has both civil and criminal consequences. "What can I do?" I asked. "Everything," he said. "The marriage will be declared void. Alimony, damages, custody of the children, and criminal charges against your husband. Also, you'll be entitled to all marital assets, because the party committing bigamy has no right to anything." I gave him all the documents, fake divorce papers, Sarah's real address, photos, social media screenshots, everything. "How did you collect all this evidence in such a short time?" he asked. "When a woman wants to learn the truth," I said, "she learns very quickly." My plan was simple but effective. I wouldn't say anything to Michael, not until the court decision came. Meanwhile, I would collect more evidence. 3 weeks later, the court made its decision. Our marriage was void. I had custody of the children. Michael was found guilty of bigamy, and the house, the cars, the money in bank accounts, even the retirement funds, all of it was mine. That evening when Michael came home, I had left the court decision on the table. Next to it was a suitcase. He froze in the doorway. "What's this?" "The end of your 15-year lie," I said calmly. "And your last night in this house." His face turned white. He picked up the paper, read it. I could see his hands trembling. "How," he began, "are you asking how I found out, or how you could be so stupid?" He sat down, put his head in his hands. "I can explain," he said. "You're 15 years too late," I said. "The kids and I are moving to our new house. You're leaving too, but you're going to Sarah, your real wife, your only wife." "Will I be able to see my children?" "Weekends. The court decided that. But I'll be ready too, because they're going to learn who you really are, slowly, age appropriately, as the man who lied to their mother for 15 years. Michael started crying, but I knew this was a lie too. Every tear he had shed for 15 years was a lie. "Why?" I asked. "Just why?" "I loved you," he said. "I really loved you, but I couldn't leave Sarah either. I didn't want to lose both of you." "Then you loved neither of us," I said. "You only loved yourself. And now you have neither of us." Last week, Sarah called. She spoke very calmly on the phone. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know for 15 years. Michael lied to me too. He told me you were dead." At that moment, I realized that Michael hadn't just committed bigamy. He had deceived 2 women. He had told both of us that the other was dead. We were both victims of the same lie. Sarah and I met for coffee. We told each other our 15-year stories. We had both lived the same lies. What if the person you thought you knew for 15 years turned out to be someone you never knew at all? Then you're glad you never knew them, because the person you knew never existed at all. Michael now lives alone. He lost both of us. He sees the children on weekends, but they're distant from him now too, because children immediately sense lies. That photo on the phone destroyed my life, but actually, it saved my life, because the life I was living was already a lie. My real life is just beginning now. What do you think? Was what Michael did right, or can living a double life never be justified? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. See you in the next video.